So, SpaceX is on the verge of launching the biggest, most powerful rocket ever. But you know what? The launch itself? That might not even be the craziest part of the whole plan. The real head-scratcher, the real mystery, is what they're going to do just a few minutes after it leaves the ground.
And that brings us to the big question, right? The one that's been buzzing around everywhere and what we're going to break down today. Are they really going to try and catch this skyscraper-sized booster with a pair of giant robotic arms on its very first flight? I mean, seriously.
All right, let's just get right into it. This is the billion-dollar question. And look, the logical, sensible answer has to be no way, right? It just sounds impossibly risky. But we're talking about SpaceX here, and sensible isn't always in their vocabulary.
So how do we even begin to guess what they'll do? Well, you've got to look at their track record. You have to look at their history of, well, let's just call it what it is, a history of sending it.
I mean, this timeline really says it all, doesn't it? It shows you exactly how they operate. Think back to 2013. Their very first try at a water landing ended a big fireball. But did they stop? Nope. They kept at it. And eventually, they managed a soft water landing, which proved, hey, our guidance system actually works. Then came the drone ships. Remember all those explosions and near misses? It was failure after failure until it wasn't. And now, landing these things is just normal. It's routine.
And when I say routine, I mean they've stuck the landing over 128 times. That's not just a number, you guys. That is a mountain of data. It's a whole library of experience and confidence that they're carrying into this super heavy attempt.
So you see the pattern here, right? It's their core philosophy. Learn by doing, and don't be afraid to push the envelope on the very first try. I mean, just look at the first Falcon Heavy flight. That was nuts. First time firing that many engines, first time separating 3 boosters, and they decided, hey, let's try to land 2 of them at the same time. It's just baked into their DNA.
Okay, so their history definitely suggests a first flight catch is on the table. But the real juicy stuff, the clues we can really sink our teeth into, that's buried in the official flight plans. And this is where things get really interesting. Because the plans, well, they kind of tell 2 different stories.
So check this out. On the one hand, you have the original plan they filed a while back. It's conservative. The booster does its job and then aims for a nice, gentle splashdown about 20 miles offshore. Safe, simple, predictable. But then, you look at the updated plan, and it says the booster might do a partial return, or it might return all the way to Starbase to be caught by the launch tower. That is a huge jump in ambition, like night and day.
So, boom, there it is in black and white. The official paperwork now specifically mentions the catch. This isn't just fan speculation anymore. It's right there, a stated possibility in their own mission plan.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking right now. That is absolutely insane. Are they crazy? They're going to risk the entire launch pad? And you're not wrong to think that. But there's a really clever bit of engineering here that shifts this from a wild gamble into a highly calculated risk. And the key to all of this is a concept called a fail-safe trajectory. So what the heck is that? Well, in simple terms, it means the rocket's default path, where it's going to end up if it does absolutely nothing, is a safe splashdown in the ocean, way away from anything important. It only makes the move to go for the big prize at the very last second.
Let me break down how this works, because they've basically perfected this with the Falcon 9. Step 1. You aim away. The booster's initial flight path back is targeted for a boring, empty patch of the Gulf. Then, as it's falling, the computers are running a non-stop health check. Engines? Check. Grid fins? Check. Thrusters? Check. Is every single thing working perfectly? Only, and I mean only, if it gets a perfect score across the board does it commit to the catch. It does one final burn to nudge itself over to the tower. And if there's even the slightest hiccup, the smallest little problem, it just does nothing. It keeps going on that original safe path and plops right into the water. No harm, no foul.
So you can see the method is brilliant. It's really, really smart. But what if something goes wrong right at the end? During that final go-for-it burn, what's really on the line if they miss the catch?
Well, the first thing you've got to realize is that by the time this booster gets back for landing, it's practically running on empty. It only has a tiny bit of fuel left for that final landing burn. So a giant, dramatic fireball like we've seen in some of the other Starship tests, that's actually not the biggest worry here.
No, the real risk isn't so much a boom. The #1 danger is kinetic impact. We're talking about the sheer mass of this giant steel tube slamming into the launch tower, or even worse, the nearby tank farm.
That kind of impact could cause damage you just can't fix, taking the whole launch site out of commission for a very long time.
And that leads us to one final, and I think very telling clue. What is SpaceX doing right now, as we speak? They're busy building a second Starship launch tower, a near-perfect copy over in Florida. Now ask yourself, why would you build a complete backup of something so expensive and complex unless you're planning for a situation where your first one might get, shall we say, taken out of the game?
All right, let's put it all together. Let's weigh all the evidence we've looked at and try to come to some kind of verdict on what we should really expect from this incredible first flight.
So, let's recap the case for a first flight catch. Point 1. Their whole history is about being aggressive on Flight 1. Point 2, the updated flight plan literally uses the word catch. Point 3, they have that clever, fail-safe trajectory that turns a crazy risk into a calculated one. Point 4, they've got all that experience from over 128 Falcon 9 landings. And the final nail in the coffin, they're already building a backup tower. You know, when you lay it all out like that, the argument for them going for it is actually pretty convincing.
So, what's the verdict? Will they actually do it? Look, the sensible choice, the safe play, is to just ditch it in the ocean. No question. But that just brings us full circle, doesn't it? Since when has SpaceX ever played it safe? The only thing we know for sure is that when this monster rocket finally lifts off, we are all going to see something absolutely spectacular.